Well, I'm going to bring up a few items that probably aren't brought up on other channels. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I don't know what they're saying on other channels. But this is going to be about destabilization of the petrodollar and what also is going on in South Africa, too. In South Africa, specifically for gold production and platinum production and also even palladium production, there's a lot of destabilization going on in that country, and the gold production has been dropping due to that, which should bring the price of gold up because gold even has essential uses in manufacturing that really can't be replaced because it's a non-corrosive type of conductor. So, I don't know how long the prices are going to stay down, but that's, pure conjecture. But, obviously it's the precious metals are an excellent investment at this time. Palladium, it should still go up, but it could really take a hit if the markets come down really hard because of it's 95% industrial. But I also want to point out something else, that the oil reserves are basically being depleted throughout the world. Now, I know this could be controversial because sometimes people are thinking that the oil reserves are constantly being replaced from deep within the earth, and maybe some of that's true, but still, it's becoming more and more expensive to pump out oil. In other words, in the United States, we could be totally energy independent if the oil was at $80 a barrel on the WTI. But right now, well, it's starting to creep up a little bit due to tensions in Syria. But one of the things that actually holds up the dollar is the demand for oil. And guess who really demand for oil is coming from? The United States and Canada, even some of the European nations. This is a chart showing like the darker areas are more demand per capita. Even Saudi Arabia is got some pretty high demand too, because they have learned to, use it domestically. That wasn't the case before. So the demand for oil is actually what's holding up our dollar, so they're never going to get rid of this system. As a matter of fact, if they ever came out with some kind of alternative energy source, the dollar would collapse. And it looks like we're, you've heard these things, and a lot of them sometimes are exaggerations and BS rumors, but then in other cases they're not. And there is technology out there that's been out there for a long time that we can actually not use oil for energy. There has been, you heard about Stanley Myers with the supposed, it's actually a hydrogen-powered car where he found an efficient method of splitting hydrogen from water, getting the H2 out of the H2O efficiently and burning the hydrogen. And he was killed. And you also heard about Genepacks in Japan and what happened with Genepacks in 2008. They're going to come out and bring it into the major manufacturing of automobiles, like in Mitsubishi, their luxury cars. And of course, they had a Japanese tsunami and earthquake. Which you could think maybe that was cause and association there, cause and effect. But what's also going on is, as there's a growing middle class increasing in areas that never had a middle class, which is Asia, South America, the Middle East. There's more people. In other words, the middle class is pretty much steady in the United States and Europe, so the demand is fairly steady. But new areas are coming on because people are driving cars in China, driving cars in India, driving cars more. South America does have, well, more and more people are driving cars in South America, in South American countries, and even African countries. So as that's increasing, there's going to be a lot more pressure on oil. Now, that is good for the dollar, actually, because the higher the price of oil, even though that does somewhat put the brakes on manufacturing, energy prices actually put the brakes on manufacturing because the cost of manufacturing, transportation, and growing food goes up. It also protects the dollar because they have to hold more dollars because oil is traded in U.S. dollars ultimately. So it's good for that system. It's good for the actual keep the petrodollar up. I'm not saying it's good overall. But what I'm looking at is there's going to be basically, you're seeing several things happen first with the precious metals. You see, oil is actually related to the precious metals. When oil takes a hard um, turn upward and starts escalating, usually oil takes a real high upward, skyrocketing to the moon when you see major conflict in the Middle East. Maybe maybe that's coming down the pike. I don't know. Trump has seemed to be right in there with the neocons and stuff. So maybe I don't know. Maybe that's a possibility. Um, the Syrian policy is actually based upon Russia doesn't want a pipeline going through Syria, so because then oil and natural gas would be pumped from the Middle East like Qatar much more cheaply than Russia could provide it to Europe, and thus they would lose a major slice of their um, cash cow, which is coming from Europe. So they don't want a pipeline going through Syria. That's why there's a major conflict. That's one of the major reasons. They don't want a major pipeline going through Syria, and that's one of the major reasons for the conflict in Syria. Because if that pipeline was built, Qatar would no longer have to use the tankers and go all the way around, and it would be cheaper to transfer the oil to Europe. So, but still, these tensions in the Middle East, if something happens dramatic, will cause the oil to go way up, and gold and silver will follow, and also platinum and palladium, because if there's more tensions between the United States and Russia. Right now, tensions between the United States and Russia aren't bad because Trump's in office, but say Trump's not in office because the markets came down or something in 2018 or 2019, and he wasn't re-elected in 2020, there might be a complete policy change. And then, if there's bad relations between Russia and the United States, you're going to see palladium skyrocket. Now, also, what a lot of people aren't mentioning is all the destabilization that's going on in South Africa in their economy. And I'm not going to mention all the different things that are going on there, but it's a lot of bad things going on, obviously. But that's also, South Africa's been slipping on gold production for many years now. And it should be driving the price of gold up, but I don't really see it yet. Now, we can actually get out of this whole quagmire through farming. I know they've been, legalizing hemp and marijuana growth for medical purposes, but they need to be legalizing hemp for fuel purposes, because actually hemp will grow 10 times as much fuel per acre than corn will. Plus, it doesn't require pesticides, herbicides, and it's not bad for the soil either. So that's another thing. The soil doesn't get depleted. So you're not putting all these herbicides and pesticides, which is causing poisonous runoff in the aquifers and stuff. And you can run cars on biodiesel, These were the good Mercedes back in the day, before they got complicated. I used to like the old stuff from Germany, even before they got these plastic engines and stuff and all that garbage. But that is actually one of the solutions, and probably, if you were thinking about an endeavor, the problem is they got to make it legal. But if you're thinking about, an entrepreneurial endeavor to get into, and you weren't afraid of, putting a sweat equity into it, growing hemp, industrial hemp would be the deal. Actually, growing industrial hemp can be done by anybody, even in the suburbia, for crying out loud. If you have, a plot 50 by 50 feet, you can grow industrial hemp as long as it's legal, and as long as somebody, because as long as it's legal, somebody's going to buy it. And, a lot of small farmers would actually provide for plenty of fuel and materials, and can replace plastics, which are, filling up our landfills, and it can be used for clothing. It's actually the solution to pretty much all our problems, but, the big industrialists made it illegal a long time ago. But not big industrialists like Henry Ford, which he advocated for this many times and many years ago. He expected all of his products to be run on the, plants, excess wasted plants that are being thrown away, maybe excess agricultural plants that produce that spoiled, like you use it for fuel. Crying out loud, you can even use sewage for fuel a lot of times. There's ways to get fuel from that. And this was actually the vision of Rudolf Diesel. So there is actually a solution for all these problems in getting away from the petrodollar system, but the petrodollar system is actually not just benefiting big oil, but it's also benefiting big banks. And, this is one of the reasons, well, there's a lot of reasons why they made hemp, and not just, medical marijuana or cannabis. Cannabis used to be in all the freaking medical prescriptions out there before the 1930s and back, and they made it illegal because basically it started to be far more competitive to a lot of other industries that were entrenched, like DuPont with nylon and Hearst with his paper mills, and of course Standard Oil, Rockefeller, which he was selling. As a matter of fact, that was why Prohibition was started. Prohibition was started backed by Rockefeller. He gave millions of dollars to the women's suffrage movement to start Prohibition because the alcohol being produced on the farms was actually in competition for his Standard Oil gasoline product, and actually alcohol was preferred fuel for the Model T. Not even talking about diesel, which is even better, which was developed by Rudolph Diesel. But, even a gasoline engine could run on alcohol, and alcohol was very clean. So the oil in the engines would stay cleaner, and the oil in the engines would, that would cause the motors to last longer. And the exhaust fumes smelled cleaner and all that. People preferred that. Basically, Rockefeller forced them off the market with Prohibition. That's what it was really about. I mean, he used the religious people to force it out for another reason, but it was really about keeping his product in market and knocking out the competition completely. But that was the other deal with hemp too. The deal with hemp was they found a way to make hemp. They found a way to produce hemp, or take the hemp from the fibers from the plant with new machinery more efficiently, and it was going to be a big product. It was going to be the number one product, and all of a sudden they made it illegal. They put some scare stories in there about the effects of marijuana and all this type of stuff, and they made it illegal. So, I mean, there's always a solution to, like, the doom and gloom. I mean, that's what I'm saying. But what's really coming up is you got a destabilization. And a destabilization is going to be occurring not only in the Middle East, but also probably, well, we also see there's destabilization going on in South Africa, which is a big producer of gold and platinum. And also, they're a fairly good-sized producer of palladium. Actually, palladium, 43% of it comes from Russia, but then a large slice of it also comes from South Africa. So the precious metals should be driving up. And usually what happens is commodities go up altogether. In other words, oil can really cause gold to go up a lot. It's almost always the case, because when oil goes up, there's a lot of usually it's a lot of destabilization in the Middle East, and there's a lot of fear. And what happens in that time, and also the markets come down really hard, there's an inverse relationship usually between gold and the markets, the general equities, in the broad speaking term. So if, say, the markets came down 25%, you would see gold go up a lot because of fear tactics. That's what people do. They look for the safe haven. And if people are trying to buy it, well, maybe it's not going to be there. The thing is, you got the paper gold, you got the physical gold, and obviously the paper gold is probably all fake, just like the paper silver. And maybe people are going to be, as far as the wealthy goes, you could actually put a lot of money into not that much gold. And that's one of the things. Silver takes up a lot of space. I mean, if you got tens of millions of dollars you want to put into something that's a precious metal, you want to really use gold. You don't really want to be using silver. But the problem is, I don't think it's actually there. The physical reserves aren't there. And there's still actually industrial demand for gold, and it's in the industries that it's being used, it can't be replaced. The problem in South Africa, it's one of the major gold producers in the freaking world, and it's it should actually be pushing the price up by now, for crying out loud. But, if you're looking at all the factors, not just the destabilization in South Africa where gold is produced, and platinum, and also palladium, and also the potential conflict that could be coming up Russia over, Syria's pipeline. Now, I don't think it's going to be that bad under the Trump administration, but I don't know if the Trump administration is going to survive 2020, depending on what happens with the economy, because the economy is actually due for, a cyclical downturn in the general equities by then. And, the actual savior is going to be agriculture. The problem is they need to lift all the restrictions on growing hemp. Hemp would be the plant that would actually save the country. That would be the thing that would make America great again. The individual farmers doing all this stuff, going right back to old school all the way. And also the corollary industries that support the farms, like, in other words, the machinery that makes the manufacturers that make the machinery and the tractors and all that stuff to support the agricultural industry. But the thing is, when you're looking at overall, the wealthy are probably going to stay in power as long as fuel prices are going up, and because that's going to keep the dollar stronger, because the demand for the dollar is going to be there, because that's really what the petrodollar is about. For the wealthy, fuel prices aren't a large slice of their net disposable income, because they got so much money. But it's going to be creating a lot of, discord amongst the population, because that's also going to raise food prices. So we shall see how this is all going to work out. But I think in the long run, you're going to definitely see the precious metals are going to have to go up because of all these destabilization factors. Not just the Middle East, but also there's South Africa, but also we're seeing it's the impossibility to continue this petrodollar system when you're looking at new demand that's coming in from Asia and Oceania, where there's new middle class. It's going to be impossible with the existing reserves at pumping it out at the existing cost. It's going to be impossible. And something's going to have to give. So, I don't think they can keep a lid on the alternative fuels and technologies forever. I know they're out there, so stick with your investment, obviously, and, like I said, the next move is probably one of your best, things to really think about. Not so much is precious metals a wrong move right now, but your next move probably would be real estate after the real estate markets crash. So, if you're looking for an eye to the foreseeable future. Right now, real estate markets are hot and heavy, but they're probably going to crash again. When you're looking at what's going on, the subprime crisis is already set up to happen all over again, only worse than what happened in 2008. So, anyway, I just figured I'd give you a little heads up on that too, because what do you do after you sell gold and silver and it goes way the hell up? Real estate has always been a very good investment as long as you're careful in what you're doing. But then if you're buying, in 2008, you were able to buy houses that you couldn't even build them for that much. So that's where a lot of the smart money went. That's probably going to repeat itself eventually. Right now, the real estate market's going pretty hot and heavy and strong. That's one of the reasons Donald Trump is doing well, because he's in the type of real estate, commercial real estate, prime commercial real estate, that has been benefiting by the economic policies of the government since, the last great recession we had in 2008, 2009. But don't expect the status quo to keep remaining the same forever. As a matter of fact, we're probably going to be a nation that's going to be less dependent on oil in the future, but our energy needs are not going to really diminish, and I think the only way out of it is not through shale oil production, but it's going to be through growing hemp. Hopefully, we got to really stop it. Well, it really comes down to this. The government is owned by the big powers, the big oil, and the banks, and, that's why these things have been, happening this way. In other words, why are we stuck with just big oil? Why can't we grow hemp? Well, it's quite obvious. It's a rigged game. But then again, a lot of times, even though the elite are extremely smart, they do paint themselves in the corner. And they don't see all the outside factors. So, anyway, just so there's always room for hope. Over now.